So now that we've gone through these various structures in the hierarchy of the evolution of human consciousness, and it is a hierarchy that's made explicit in Beck's work, in Ken Wilber's adaptation of spiral dynamics. This is an unfolding of more and more of structures which are more and more capable of holding deeper values, and so it would be better if more people were at a green or a yellow level than at a red or an orange. And evolution will always be this struggle between competing niches, you could say, because there's niche or niche, I never know which it is. I think I just combined it there. But each of these structures is in a constant struggle between its future potentials and its past inheritances. And as I said at the end of the last video, they're always mutually dependent on them. So if you're thinking in a yellow, seeing through a yellow lens, you're making use of green and orange and blue and red and purple and beige all at once in order to attain that yellow center of gravity. And yellow may be the first structure which is aware of this, but even if we're talking about green or orange, those underlying spectrums are still underneath supporting those higher level abilities. In other words, you need to be able to speak a language which was developed at the purple, around purple and red, in order to think logically, which is an orange achievement. So language is a factor which is continually evolving through these structures as well, which I only really touched on in the discussion about the purple or the magic structure of consciousness. But language as a technology is developing alongside these mutations in our conscious experience of the world, and we don't want to assign the causal power to language itself in this evolution, because we were also participating in the continual invention and further complexification of our languages. So, it's not like the technology of language is completely responsible for our consciousness changing, but there's obviously a correlation between the two. So, when we learn how to use language first with sounds, with speech and with music, and at the same time we began to learn to draw on cave walls and in the dirt, developed a sense of signs, and these two abilities began to synthesize, and we developed the first written languages. And they were sort of pictographic at first, more like ideograms than a phonetic alphabet, which was a further achievement, which you could say takes place in the blue structure of consciousness. And then when print emerged, we start to move out of blue and into orange. You can start to distribute leaflets around to brew up revolutionary fervor, and people begin to be able to think for themselves, because to be able to write, you have to develop this very sophisticated inner dialogue, which isn't present in a purely oral culture. So this notion of individual rights is directly related to the increased literacy rates which were allowed because of print. And when you start to move into radio, and then television, and then the internet, orange just explodes into the green. And green, I think, emerged because of television, because we started to get these images back from wars. We started to see the destruction and the poverty which existed around the world as a result of our capitalistic economic system and globalization. And TV showed us these images, and all of a sudden we became a little bit more self-aware of the interrelationship of all the creatures on this planet. And then with the internet, we get an even further deepening of this awareness, and the yellow structure begins to emerge in relation to this new way of sending language through the airwaves electronically. Um, and I would imagine the turquoise will also be related to some new means of communication, some new way of languaging, which is probably already developing. But the point of bringing up language is to point out that this evolution of consciousness is both an individual and a communal or societal endeavor. Language is always shared, no matter what level of language you're talking about. Speech implies a speaker and someone to hear, and not only hear, but to be able to reply. Writing implies a writer and a reader. Contrary to the postmodern idea of the death of the author, I'm talking about this in more simplified terms. Language is a communal activity, and if language is related to this development of human consciousness, then we need to, in order to evolve, be in a relationship with other like-minded people. It's very difficult for yellow or turquoise or higher structures to develop when people capable of that potential exist in isolation. At the same time, you want to avoid the potential of a cult forming, because these are structures which are still developing, and so we can never be sure what form they will take exactly. But you would think if evolution continues to flower the way it has in the past, that this coming together of like-minded individuals would happen of itself, spontaneously, naturally, and cultish behavior would be avoided. But see, this is what makes spiral dynamics and the evolution of consciousness generally so complicated. There's really no such thing as individual enlightenment. It's a myth. It's a product of a mythic way of thinking. To project this image of a hero or divinity onto one person in particular. Really, we do this as a community. We share enlightenment. It's a common aspiration, and I think this is made clear by just an example of how it can be made clear would be the Buddhist notion of a bodhisattva who can sort of vanish into nirvana, exhale for the last time and just be released and freed of the cycle of birth and death. But the bodhisattva returns to samsara, vowing to liberate all other sentient beings before it enters nirvana. And so this is sort of an affirmation that really true enlightenment is recognizing your essential interdependence with all the other beings which exist, and that there's no freedom for you until there's freedom for everyone, because you and everyone are part of the same collective conscious movement.